A man was exiled to a tiny island. The entire world thought his story was over. They were wrong. He escaped, walked straight toward an army sent to arrest him, and instead of shooting him, they joined him. This is Napoleon Bonaparte, and this is how he almost conquered all of Europe. Welcome to Mielmobiel. Chapter 1. The Outsider. Napoleon was born in 1769 on the island of Corsica, not in France, not into a powerful family. He spoke French with a heavy accent. His classmates mocked him. But Napoleon had something the others didn't: ambition. At the age of 9, he was sent to a military academy in France. Far from home, far from everything he knew. He didn't fit in. But while other students socialized, Napoleon studied history, military campaigns, great conquerors, Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great. He analyzed every battle, every strategy, every mistake. He was building a way of thinking about war that almost no one else had. And in 1789, he got his chance. France erupted in revolution. The old system collapsed. Noble officers fled the country. Suddenly there were empty positions for talented young men. Napoleon seized that opportunity. At Toulon, in 1793, he forced the British fleet to withdraw. He was 24 years old. Victory after victory followed, faster than his enemies, smarter than his enemies. France had a new hero, and that hero wanted more. Chapter 2. The Emperor. In 1804, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of France, not a king. An emperor. Even the Pope was present at the ceremony. But Napoleon took the crown from his hands and placed it on his own head, a symbol that no one stood above him. Europe watched in shock. Over the next decade, Napoleon built an empire unlike anything Europe had seen in centuries. Austria, Prussia, Italy, Spain. One by one, his enemies fell. At Austerlitz in 1805, he lured his enemies into a trap. He deliberately weakened his right flank. The enemy attacked, exactly as Napoleon had planned. While they pushed forward on the right, Napoleon struck hard through the center. He split their army in two. It remains one of the most studied battles in military history. At Jena, he defeated Prussia so quickly that Europe could barely keep up. Again and again, Europe formed coalitions to stop him. Again and again, Napoleon defeated them. But he didn't only change Europe through war. Wherever his armies marched, old systems disappeared. Feudal privileges abolished. New laws introduced. The Napoleonic Code. A legal system based on equality before the law. It didn't matter who your father was, the law applied to everyone equally, for millions of Europeans. This was revolutionary. His soldiers adored him. He marched with them, rode with them, appeared where the fighting was fiercest. To many, he seemed unstoppable. Chapter 3. The Fall. But the larger the empire became, the harder it was to control. And Napoleon's greatest mistake awaited him in the east: Russia. In 1812, more than 500,000 soldiers marched toward Moscow. But the Russians didn't fight. They retreated, burned crops, destroyed villages, left nothing behind. At Borodino, a major battle finally took place. Tens of thousands died on both sides. No winner. The Russians retreated once again. When Napoleon reached Moscow, the city was in flames. The Russians had set their ancient city on fire. Napoleon waited for a peace agreement. Days became weeks, weeks became months. Nothing came. He was forced to retreat. Temperatures dropped to -30, -40. Soldiers fought over scraps of food. Many froze where they stood. Of the more than 500,000 who marched into Russia, fewer than 100,000 returned. For the first time, Europe saw Napoleon vulnerable. His enemies acted quickly. In 1814, Paris fell. Napoleon was forced to abdicate, exiled to the tiny island of Elba. Europe celebrated. The nightmare was over. Chapter 4. The Return. But they underestimated him. On Elba, Napoleon kept making plans, and he waited. Less than a year later, he escaped. With only 1,000 men, he sailed back to France. The government sent soldiers to stop him. Instead of ordering his men to open fire, Napoleon walked toward them alone. He opened his coat, exposed his chest. Then he spoke. "If any one of you wishes to kill his emperor, here I am." Silence. The soldiers did not fire. They shouted his name. Regiment after regiment switched sides. Marshal Ney had been sent to arrest Napoleon. He promised to bring him back in an iron cage. Instead, he joined him. Without fighting a single major battle, Napoleon reclaimed France. The emperor was back. The period that followed became known as the 100 Days. He worked feverishly, rebuilding his army, strengthening defences. But the leaders of Europe had already decided: no negotiations, no compromises, no second chances. The final confrontation came in Belgium, a place called Waterloo, June 18th, 1815. Heavy rain had turned the battlefield into mud the night before. Napoleon waited for the ground to dry. Precious hours slipped away. The attack began late in the morning. French infantry charged toward the British lines. Cannons thundered. Cavalry swept across open ground. For hours the outcome remained uncertain. Wellington held his ground, but it was under enormous pressure. At several moments it seemed Napoleon might win. Then figures appeared on the horizon, far away at first, but getting closer. The Prussians, fresh troops, tens of thousands of additional soldiers pouring into the battle. Napoleon had run out of time, out of men, out of luck. The French lines began to bend, then to break. The Old Guard, Napoleon's most elite unit, was driven back for the first time in its history. Panic spread through the French army like wildfire. Retreat became chaos. Chaos became flight. The age of Napoleon was over. This time, his enemies took no chances. Exiled to St. Helena, a rocky island in the South Atlantic Ocean, nearly 2,000 miles from the nearest coast, no escape possible. Napoleon spent his final years dictating his memoirs, shaping his own legend. He knew how people remembered him mattered more than anything now. In 1821 he died there, 51 years old. But his influence never disappeared. His legal reforms still form the foundation of legal systems across Europe. His military tactics are still studied at the world's leading academies. He began as an outsider from a small island nobody took seriously. He became Emperor of France, lost everything, came back when the world thought it was impossible, and left behind a legacy still visible more than 200 years later. Some see him as a hero, others as a tyrant. But everyone agrees on one thing: very few people have changed the world as much as Napoleon Bonaparte. Subscribe to Mielmobiel, because there are many more stories like this coming soon.